All right, so welcome everybody to our Enviro-Art Gallery speaker series. I'm very excited to have you guys all here today, and I hope everyone's just as looking forward to this presentation as I am. So I'll pass it over to you, Donovan, to introduce yourself, and then I guess launch into your presentation and tell us a little bit about what you do.
Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Donovan Zimmerman, and I am an artist and puppeteer who is based here in the Triangle. I live in a little town called Saxapahaw, which is just west of Chapel Hill. But I do all sorts of puppetry arts, and I create giant shows and spectacles, and that are often rooted in environmental justice very much. But we also do a lot of we sometimes call interventions, which is just coming to a place and creating a giant puppet spectacle with parades and other types of characters that are activated in the community. And we do that all over, well, actually all over, I guess I'm gonna almost have to say the world. We've been doing some international travel in the past number of years, and teaching residencies and doing puppetry in different parts of the world. But mostly we stay concentrated in North Carolina, but we make it to the mountains and the coasts, as well as doing lots of things around here in the Triad and the Triangle. Yeah, so Paper Hand is the name. Paper Hand Puppet Intervention is the name of the company. And it started with myself and Jan Berger 20 years ago. And it essentially was a way for us to share our ideas about how we felt the very strong, passionate need to create deeper connection with ourselves and our humanity to the natural world. And that by shifting some of our attention away from, some of the things that we get programmed to do, participating in crazy capitalist, schemes, and also tons of different numbing behaviors, that we would just try to feel a little bit deeper into the reverence and the respect for the natural world that in our minds leads to an unraveling of some of the tension that gets bound up in our societies and our civilization. So we're very much committed to that deepening of that connection. And it's like a reawakening and or a remembering of, I guess, the interconnected nature of the world and our place in it. So we center a lot of the themes that we cover very much around that, what I've just said, but also just about telling the new story is one, the story that allows us to imagine collectively our survival here on the planet as a species, and in the same time trying to prevent some of the mass extinction that is happening. So we do align ourselves and participate in a lot of activist work outside of our own activism within our shows with groups like Extinction Rebellion, the Sunrise Foundation, Sunrise, I think it's called, 350.org. There's a lot of organizations that we partner with that we participate in, either direct actions or sometimes we go up to DC and other places where there's going to be a march, and just lend the sort of beauty and sort of grandeur of giant puppets to some of these causes, because sometimes activism can turn into a lot of shouting, and a lot of people are upset about a lot of things. And so we try to focus a little bit more of our energy into inspiring people to sort of shift in a general direction towards sustainability, and towards environmental justice and social justice. And I think I've seen it have some great successes. I've seen our puppetry be able to stop violence from happening in the actual moment, which is that's a very direct action way that I've seen the puppets. They come around the corner and there was a bunch of batons and police were ready to actually start hitting people. And the puppets came in and there was this big sort of spectacle moment of like, whoa. And the police just said, you know what, never mind. Let's just put these away and sort of shift gears. And and it de-escalated the situation rather nicely. But the other form of activism is the more appealing to hearts and minds, and people experiencing a show that leads them on an emotional journey of sorts, that they leave, hopefully just feeling, maybe some tears are shed, maybe some laughs were had, but it opens people up a bit to, I find, at least my hope is that it open up to more possibilities of, deepening our kindness and our respect and our gratitude, and living in a more deeply connected way. It's work that I'm doing just for my own self, but I love that other people are inspired by it. And so I named, this presentation, "The Role of the Artist in Times of Silence is to Sing Out." And this is something, that I've thought about a lot over the years, because it just, I find that once my voice has been amplified enough within people, sort of coming and wanting to experience our work, that my level of responsibility have felt toward like saying something that's worthwhile, that does actually help and benefit society or benefit the world in some way, and help change a bit of the paradigm that I find to be somewhat dissatisfactory, the current paradigm that we live in. So I think that, silence is one of the things that allows, basically atrocity and great amounts of degradation and harm to happen. It's not the direct action of actually doing the harm, but it's the silence of many that allows these things to unfold. And there's a lot of blind eyes turned to some of the environmental, I guess, travesties that, that are happening on a daily basis. And the list is too long to even go into, but so we do encourage a great deal of engagement in the way that we want people to raise their voice. And sometimes that looks like a celebration or like a communal sort of, I guess, artistic endeavor, or communal mutual arising is sometimes what I call it, where we all sort of rise up and do art together. And I consider that to be kind of an antidote to some of the more harmful and hurtful things that happen in our society, from violence to just numbing out and other behaviors that I think will, could spell disaster for us if we don't shift some of that. So that's where the intervention comes in. So the reason why we called our group Paper Hand Puppet Intervention is that in my mind, I imagined a giant paper mache hand reaching down from a cardboard cloud and basically just sort of tapping people on the head saying, okay, now is the time. Maybe it's a gentle slap or maybe it's just a tap, 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 it depends. But it's a wake-up call. It's sort of like, if we don't start addressing this immediately and see the urgency in it, a lot of harm can still be done, and I believe can be avoided by our by our actions now. So, and you know, and we come from a a long lineage, I believe, of art and activism. I think about pretty much all theater that I can imagine, even back from the earliest times that theater has been recorded. I believe that the actors and performers poked fun at the powers that be, the people who were in charge, and sometimes to their peril, for sure. It's not always accepted in the same way that we have here. But I think that they risked it anyway, because they not only poked fun, but they, delivered some scathing critiques of how things were being handled from the top down. And so we step into that lineage, and we do like to hold people in power accountable, because those things are very important. And so we come from a place where the saying, art should comfort the disturbed and disturb the comfortable, which is a Cesar Cruz quote. But that's sort of a bit central to our I guess ethos, if you will. And some recent signage that I saw at some protests were sorry for the inconvenience, we're trying to change the world. And I'm not an apologist, but I mean, sometimes our art can come across to people as maybe like too politically charged at times. We've gotten that criticism, or maybe too environmentally focused, and maybe sometimes people get tired of issues coming in. But to me, I feel often that when we're speaking about something, we're very much trying to, it just feels like a necessity for us to, to bring that to the table, and to have that be a part of our community's conversation. And so we really do try to bring that, but we try to wrap it in a package that's not only beautiful, but that stirs the emotions, and does all of the things that good theater should do and good art should do. But I think it's more common for art and art history in general, for artists to be saying something that is about, how we view the world, and how we interact with the world, and how our humanity is expressing itself. And it's only sort of a more modern thing that art has become, something that matches your couch, or is just sort of like, I guess, for entertainment value only, and doesn't really concern itself with the message as much. But a principle, or like another sort of set of words that really guide me as an artist, is the Khalil Gibran quote, that work is love made visible. And then I always my work is my love for the world made visible. But then Cornel West went on to say, justice is what love looks like in public. So we do very public art, and we have giant puppets, and we try to make our love for the earth and for our common humanity very visible in all of that. And so anyway, that's the essence of what Paperhand is about. We use a lot of recycled materials to sort of back up our environmental stance, with trying to sustain our lives here. So we use a lot of cardboard that we get from furniture stores and other places to do our sculpting. We use paper mache and paper that will, basically rot back into the ground. There's nothing that we're making that is that has a huge lasting footprint. I mean, it lasts long enough, but paper mache always, will compost in the end. And we do either we either sometimes create our own retelling of an ancient story or a myth, or we will create our own sort of new either pageantry or I guess stories that come from our own cast that appeals to the universal but has a very personal element as well. And all of that is about, I guess, unlocking our sometimes very pent up hearts and minds so that we can feel more. I think that's a big part of our activism, because as we feel our way forward, we build a capacity to, I guess, hold more. And I find that's, I don't know. I find that I've convinced myself that that's a good skill to develop, because it's easy to become overwhelmed by, and so the more we can hold as human beings, the more we, centered we can stay, and the more stay in the window of presence a bit more. So I could, if you would like, I could show you all around my studio and talk a little bit about some of the images that you might see as we walk around the studio here. I'm going to turn on the lights so that you can see a bit more. So down here at this end of the studio is just a giant collection of different characters. There's a giant sun. This is a bunny that we made a number of years ago, a lot of forest creatures. This giant sun has also hands, and it ends up being about 40 feet wide when it is all open and its cloth body is engaged. Up there is a great horned owl that's about 15 feet tall and has a 20-foot wingspan. This is one of our sort of Mother Earth faces named Rhea. It has a giant brain just that happens to be sitting on top of it, but you can ignore that. It looks like a weird growth on the side of her face, but whatever. Here is Grandmother Spider. And Grandmother Spider was a character that we used to tell some ancient stories, because there's a lot of spider mythology from around the world where that we found very fascinating as a uniting principle around creation stories and other things like that. And so we used her as our storyteller. Here's a deer. That's a one-person puppet that wears the whole costume, and your body goes into it's like a backpack. This right here is something we call an earth defender, and it's sort of like a pangolin mixed with a pine cone, but it has this sort of movable cardboard sort of construction where it's constructed over some stretchy fabric on the inside, but it makes sort of has this little snout, and someone goes inside of there, namely me, and manipulates this giant creature, which we called an earth defender because we actually did, some big battle scenes that in a show recently. Our most recent show was in 2019, and we've been shut down because of COVID, of course. But it went up against this guy here, who is just kind of a big, nasty capitalist, white supremacist, whatever. We kind of tried to just embody some of the nastier sides of the human condition, and it's got these different like sort of grumpy and angry, ugly faces kind of all mounted onto his body. And we called him Octobad, and because he's got multiple arms. He's got a big fist, which you can see here. He's got a pointer finger, which is like his big sort of like accusatory pointer finger, and also like pumping his finger in the air like, we're number one, you know, kind of like the USA kind of things that you hear. But he also has like a hand with a big money bag, kind of like, you know, and a big oil rig, and you get the idea. We've got several of these sort of fat cat capitalist guys with funky hair and cheesy grins around the studio here. This guy's pretty funny. He's kind of like a used car salesman kind of a guy. But here next to him, we have Prometheus, which we did in the same show as Grandmother Spider. She told the story of Prometheus, and he was in that show, not only as this character, but being portrayed with shadows as well. And again, that show was all about fire. And, you know, we tried to tie in how fire was not only, we sort of turned it into the idea that there was a good fire and a bad fire, and that the bad fire burns our communities down, but the good fire, you know, warms us and lights our way in the night. And so we broke that down into several different ways to sort of tell our stories there. Here is some more characters from around the studio. This is these sort of water spirits that we made that we used as sort of like we personify things, you know, to kind of give them a living quality. And that's a big part of our activism, is that if we see the earth as a living being, maybe we'll be less inclined to harm. So one of those, though, when it was turned inside out, is this big puppet that we called the climate crisis or climate chaos puppet. And it's sort of like this nasty looking thing with this kind of gas mask tube face looking thing. But we turned it around by having this tree shepherd, which I'll show you right over here. She came and touched the climate chaos puppet, and it turned back inside out, and it happened to be one of those water spirits. But this right here is our tree shepherd. She's like a pretty tall, 16-foot tall giant, sort of Mother Earth again, but you know, it was very specifically about trees. Her particular self, her big branchy sort of hairdo with leaves. And right next to her here is this is a giant sky representation, a personification of the sky, that if you look closely, you can see that his beard is all, and his eyebrows are all birds. And so this is a puppet that is about 50 feet wide, and it's covered in big swirling clouds, and it's all just sort of hanging here right now, but it has, you can see the giant hands here behind this ladder, and it stretches out really wide. There's some lovely pictures of it online if anyone wants to explore that. Here we have a barred owl that's just leaning here in the corner, waiting for its next flight. So one year we just made a bunch of owl puppets, and did sort of an owl interlude, we called it, where we were just sort of celebrating a bit of the wonder of, you know, birds like owls. Made sense to us at the time. Here are some more giant puppets from around the room. You can see some of our silkscreen prints. It says people power. We've got different ones like that we've printed, and we paint different color hands on. And then here's some trees and a sun, and we call this woman here the resistance goddess. And she's got her fist raised in the air, and we've taken her to a lot of marches and things over the past year, Black Lives Matter and other things. It was actually made in collaboration with an artist of color that we work with, named Tarish Pipkins, who's a puppeteer in the area also. And he was pretty instrumental in making that one. And we have here some giant turtles that we've made. They're kind of sort of I guess I would say Galapagos style tortoises. Let's see if I can get this thing. But their heads are like this, and they people go inside, and two people wear these shells, and then they wear big turtle pants, and it ends up looking like a beautiful big old turtle, and you can manipulate the head around quite easily. Here's a two-headed troll, which I don't know, hard to say what that exactly is doing, except it was fun to make. It's just two puppeteers get in there, and they tend to just like whack each other with their two opposite hands, and they're kind of like brothers who get into fights all the time. Let's see. I think that one way I can talk about how we incorporate our activism is by sort of explaining like one part of a show and this part of the show was about this character here, whose name is Humbaba. And Humbaba is from the ancient story of Gilgamesh, which comes from Mesopotamia. And we told that story a number of years ago, but its mouth opens on these elastics here, and it's controlled by a puppeteer. Its face, actually, you can see, is all segmented. So each of these pieces along these lines that you see here snap together with magnets and form the face. And it has a giant body that uses things like this big paper mache tree, cardboard and paper mache tree, as its limbs. So it's hands and feet, and it's all connected by cloth. Now, the way that we retold that story was we very much did it from Humbaba's point of view, and we had Gilgamesh, the sort of typical hero, which is this Gilgamesh here with his braided beard and his fancy, Mesopotamian whatever. And then this is his beast friend, part man, part beast. His name is Enkidu. And, it's a pretty famous story. It was the first story that was supposedly ever written down on tablets, clay tablets. And, but as we told the story, we just told it very much more from Humbaba's point of view, so that, and gave, to create some empathy with the typical monster. So we try to flip the script a good bit on how we immediately think that Humbaba is this horrible monster that's, hurting people, and everyone has all this fear around it. But instead, we made it as he's the protector of the forest, and it's his sacred task to protect this cedar grove. And, Gilgamesh and his greed and hubris and his, quote unquote heroicism, goes out into the forest and basically kills Humbaba, and takes the trees in order to build the giant city, of Uruk, which is one of the first giant cities that were ever built by humans. And so it's this meeting of civilization and human beings, and interacting with the wild and the natural world in these early times. And it has a lot of layers of meaning. And we explored all of that with our show, and we basically, retold the story in a way that allowed people to empathize more with the monster. And we've done that with witch characters as well, like La Loba from Mexico and Central America. And we've done it with dragons, and how the dragons are always often portrayed as being the sort of evil, wicked character. But, you know, again, a lot of times these characters and creatures just represent more of the natural world and sort of the narratives of like othering and alienating us from the natural world in order to dominate it in a sort of unfettered way. And by addressing that, that sort of core narrative that leads to a lot of, I think, poor decisions with our life here, you know, we're trying to, craft a narrative that breeds more empathy and understanding all around. Puppetry is an art form that allows the audience member to feel what the character is feeling, and they project themselves out into the puppet, as it were. And in a way, by doing so, I find that the audiences that we've engaged with are exercising, in a way, their empathy muscle, is how I like to see it. And to me, that's like a very strong part of, like, when I found that was happening as a puppeteer, it made me feel very excited about wanting to continue that type of activism, where we're literally exercising together our ability to feel and our ability to engage and our ability to have empathy, because without those things, you know, we're in trouble. So that's a bit of the paper hand story. Does anyone have any questions so far? I know I've just been talking for a while, so would anyone else like to say anything?
Yes, just to jump in, I see there were a few stuff in the chat while you were talking that was really great. It seems some people may have seen your puppets at, someone mentioned, Nicole mentioned the Sunrise event, and then Elaine mentioned the Hall River Assembly events. Do you think those were perhaps your puppets?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the Hall River Assembly, when Jan and I first met 25 or so years ago, we met at the Hall River Festival Learning Celebration, which is a environmental program for kids, fourth graders, and they're all fourth graders who get their water supply from the Hall River watershed, which is also the Cape Fear watershed. And so we combined our passion for environmental awareness and justice with our sort of desire to be artists. And that was one of the first places where that was able to take root, was at the Hall River Learning Celebration. And we did puppet shows for kids for years and years. Every year there's a 3-week-long festival where fourth graders get bussed in, and we do programming with them along the river, and macroinvertebrates and other sort of scientific and but also artistic engagement. And so a puppet show was the perfect thing for that, but we kind of continued to grow out of that and do other things. What was the other question was about?
Right, someone, Nicole mentioned, oh, sorry, if Nicole wants to ask, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, I was at a Sunrise event earlier this year, and they had, I think it was one of their bigger events that they do for the Durham hub, and they had puppets there that I thought were really cool. And when you were talking about that, I was wondering if those were possibly yours.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it was down at the Bull City Park in downtown.
Yeah,
that was us. Yeah, and we did a big march, and that was really fun. That was a fun event. But yeah, there was we try to get involved. You know, we've been involved with a lot of marches and protests around, Duke Power and their handling of coal ash, and there's so many different things that they're doing inappropriately and wrong. So we've worked with organizations like NC Warn, which tries to help people be more aware of some of the local issues around the nuclear facility. Sharon Harris down in south of Pittsburgh, etc. But yeah, we make the rounds. Do I have a single favorite creation? Oh, geez. Well, it's like picking your favorite kid, no one hardly ever says it out loud. I do have one that I particularly love, that I've been doing a lot in the past. Well, before COVID, I haven't been doing hardly anything, but I'll show it to you. It's one that I got a chance to do a bunch before COVID hit, and I would go to schools and I do shows at schools, and I was able to show up at people's schools in my fox costume, and I have a whole costume that goes with it where my whole body is shagged with the same kind of fur as this one, and I would put on What Does the Fox Say and just dance around, and every single one of the kids knew every word, and everybody was just dancing and going crazy, and that was really fun. So this has been one of my favorites because it's just so pretty, and it's got this fabulous fur that we spent a long time making sure that we got a lot of great detail and shagginess, and it has a really complete kind of costume, which makes it extra fun. So I mean, my attention or favorite sort of rotates throughout my cast of characters, depends on how much I'm using it or if it's how new it is. I always love the ones that I've made most recently, honestly. And this one did come out of our 2019 show called We Are Here. And yeah, We Are Here was the last thing we were able to do before COVID. So yeah. Any other questions people have?
When you guys are starting a new project, do you typically do you just kind of like do it on your own direction and kind of whatever you guys want to do, or do you guys work on commission from other organizations? Like, how does that process usually work? Like, where does the kind of direction and ideas come from?
Well, so Jan and I are the artistic directors, so the general direction and the theme of any given year comes from he and I sitting around drinking coffee and talking at long 4-hour meetings, and we sketch in our sketchbooks, and we just brainstorm quite openly, and we try to encourage each other's ideas, but sometimes we shut each other's ideas down or say, no, I don't think so, or whatever. But we also, we try to really open ourselves up to what's important, and what is like a powerful transformational thing that we could say and present, that would have a great impact on, we're looking for something essential, something that's cutting to the chase without being too over the head, now some people would say that our stuff is really over the head because it's so the messaging is sometimes very thinly veiled behind some other art, and that's fine with me. And really, if people are not into that, I'm perfectly fine with them going somewhere else too. We're very unapologetic, but that's how the ideas are generated. We do consult and talk with other people. We sort of run our ideas by different friends and collaborators, and then once we get the framework of the show together, we almost, I would say, kind of workshop it with our puppeteers as we rehearse. Our rehearsal process is sort of like a play workshop feedback loop where we choose some of the things that are working best. And Jan and I continue to mold and craft it until, and then the music comes together. So it has live music, it has dance, it has, you know, all the art of the building. So we have interns every year that build with us. It's quite a production, literally. You know, it's actually, and I'm not saying this in a braggy way, but it's actually kind of miraculous that it comes together, you know, because it's a lot of moving parts, and we're not orthodox in our sort of approach to theater. So it's felt a little bit crazy, and, you know, at times, like trying to bring all the pieces together. And but we've managed, you know, to pull some at least some very beautiful moments together anyway. And we've heard back from the audiences over the years that that they've been moved quite deeply, and amazingly, it's become a tradition for many families, thousands of families. I think there was 20,000 people that came to the show in 2019 over the course of 7 or 8 weekends. I'm sorry, I missed that last question. Does somebody want to read it for me?
Yes. Okay. Oh, my bad. I can read it really quick. So it looks like Lisa said, how is your work received in the artistic community?
From all I can tell, very well. But, you know, somehow I've been able to make my full-time living for the past, I don't know, 14, 13 years, something like that, just doing this. Before that, I was doing carpentry and other things at the same time. And I was able to let that go around 13 years ago. And so, I mean, there's some level of like, you know, affirmation that goes along with that people are like digging our stuff enough to keep us going. And that feels amazing, you know, and it's been a real gift. And again, with the fact that now that there are people that are your age, Cindy and Nicole, who have been coming since they were literal babies, that feels really kind of amazing in a way. It's like something I never thought of when we first got into this, that it would become a tradition for families to, like, every year they make like a really strong effort, you know, to get out to our shows, and they come multiple times. And the reason it's grown over the years is that every time people come, they always tell more people, and it has been a slow, sort of steady growth. It's still like no one's making like crazy amounts of money, but that's not really why I got into puppetry. You know, if I did, I was very confused from the beginning. But no, it is. More than the money, it feels like that the tradition and the cultural like sort of connection that people have had to our work, they very much identify with it as a thing in the area that they feel buy-in and they feel kind of proud of. That's been kind of an amazing phenomenon that I never planned, but it's amazing to see that it's happened like that. Yeah, but I think I saw the question, how has COVID impacted our work? And of course, really horribly. I mean, we had to shut down everything, of course, and we went into a pretty, well, it's a very existential thing when when you find yourself like, that's like the work that you're here to do is not just your work, like that your job, but it's actually very much like related to my whole like soul's journey, is like why I'm here to do this work. And so to have that sort of stopped completely after 20 years of you know, momentum building, and this mechanics all is in play, and then it just all kind of crumbled, and it was like is really like looking at an abyss of like, you know, my career over and everything. So I've been able to do a few things with commissions and other things in the time being. But the actual silver lining for us was that we were able to create a book during this time. That's a 250 page sort of art coffee table type of book that Jan and I co-wrote, but we included a lot of material from our cast and crew and musicians to kind of show the community aspect. And it's going to be great, and it's going to be ready for the presumptive reemergence of our show that's, I'm going to say, going to happen this summer with reduced audiences and probably mask mandates, et cetera, et cetera. But it's a journey that we're on, but we're making plans as if we're coming back to performing and gathering people. But it's been pretty fun.
Sorry, I didn't know if you were done talking.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask if there were any other questions.
Maybe we're thinking of Amazon as maybe a last resort. I mean, we're probably going to have the book at our shows, and then we are going to have it available on our website. But we were thinking of choosing a slightly more, I don't know, grassroots type of platform that would be a little less Amazon-y and not by Jeff Bezos another tire for his Ferrari. Yes, that too. And it's going to be it's printed on 100% recycled paper, which we're happy about as well. We're having to pay a little bit more for that, but we're just making that choice, you know, to kind of, again, back up, put the walking where the talking goes.
Yes, I would just like to say that if once that comes out, you could just share with us, and we will be sure to put that on the website as well.
Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I mean, Amazon has just become like, you know, I say it too, and I still order things from there. I'm not like completely, you know, I never try to like, you know, come across. These are all just a journey that we're all on, and I'm on the journey too with how we're interacting with our this world that we've, you know, co-created here together. And it's tricky, but we're doing the best we can to make little changes where we can.
And Lisa, I think, just asked, do you think it would possibly be able to buy it from the website? Lisa just asked whether where we could specifically buy it, maybe.
Well, it's still being designed right now by a designer in north of Durham, and it's going to be printed and ready for August. We had a Kickstarter campaign to pre-sale books, but we don't actually have it up at the moment as a pre-sale. But we're planning on having that very soon. But we'll it'll be on our website if you think of it again in a month or two. For sure. Paperhand.org, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, do you all want to take a quick look at like a Google image search so you can see some of the work, and then people can ask any questions about that and how, yeah, do you want to pull that up?
That would be great. Okay, I can go ahead and start screen sharing. Let's hope this works. Okay, so I believe you can probably see some of the tabs that we have pulled up. So this is Donovan's paper page on the Environment Art Gallery. This is their website, thepaperhand.org, and this is their YouTube site. I'm in the favorite section, but they do have a YouTube whole channel for Paperhand Puppet. And then if we want to Google search some images, we can probably look up a few.
Yeah, just go for Paperhand Puppet Intervention and then just hit images, and what I found is that it produces quite a lot of interesting
Great
things.
images.
There
Yeah.
you get to see there. Yeah, where she has the cursor right now, that's the owls. But here is the sky puppet that we that I mentioned earlier. That's about 50 feet wide, and then this is a river or water puppet that is about 60 feet long. That has maybe 8 to 10 people underneath. One person carrying the head, and then a bunch of people all along. And you can see the clouds and sort of birds. That is the giant sky personification there. Kind of a fun image. There's Humbaba in all of his glory as he came to life on stage at the Forest Theater. And keep going.
Looks really good in this lighting, I gotta say.
Yeah, the stage lighting makes the certain puppets look really nice. But go down a little bit further. There's the this image here with the red sticks is from a show we did called Invisible Earth, and we use these red sticks as sort of puppetry. I guess one of the terms is object manipulation that goes into puppetry, and we use the sticks as to create all different kinds of forms, and including little houses and veins being pulled from the earth. And it was really fun sort of exploration of that. There's a Trump mask that I made over in the UK. Let's not ask too many questions about that. I got commissioned by, there's the turtles that I mentioned earlier. That's kind of a nice one. The turtles that I showed you earlier, you can see the turtle pants. There's 2 puppeteers in each one. And the person in the front manipulates the head, but they end up looking very, very turtley, which I was quite happy with. Let's see. Yeah, different. If anybody has any questions about anything they see, that's a great, way to do it. But I'm going to keep scrolling down, and if I think of anything, I'll mention it.
On that note, depending on how things go and whether we could be able to see the actual production, just to let the people in this chat know, there's also a lot of great images on the site as well. And we have the paper hand We Are Here play production on the website. And it's wonderful to see on the
nice.
video. But it would be even better to see it in person, I have to say. Are you guys planning on doing any more productions in the future?
Oh yeah, of course. I was talking to that a little bit earlier, that we're trying to kickstart some of the mechanics of getting a production out for our summer, and it would be our 21st annual show, though we just missed the first year in 20 years and weren't able to do a production in the summer that just passed. And so the idea is to, with reduced audiences and with some precautions, of course, in place, we're to re-emerge and do a show starting August 27th at the Forest Theater in Chapel Hill. And it's that's all being developed now, and putting the cast and crew together, and the band, and trying to, figure it all out as we, but August 27th to October 3rd is I don't even have a name for it yet, but it's our newest production. We're going to try to have ready for then, barring any crazy, roadblocks or, Anyway, I think that covers a lot. I don't know if anyone else has any questions or
I do have a rather lighthearted question on the net. So I think you mentioned that at some point you and your team were like traveling to like international airports with the puppets. So I was wondering like how you guys could possibly transport the delegate.
Actually, what we do is we go and we get hired to go to places to build the puppets there. So because it's made with cardboard and paper and cornstarch and cloth, we can pretty much find the materials anywhere in the world. And so, and because we can do them fairly quickly, also, we can build, you know, a lot of giant puppets in a week or two. And especially if we have a crew of people who's there to paper mache and sew and do everything. So yeah, we do that. And we don't really like fly them around very much. You know, they're kind of hard to transport.
Yes, for sure. Though I can't imagine getting to see your puppets in like the airport setting with like all the glass windows in the fronts would be really inspiring. Also, I was wondering as an extra question, so you did mention that you had some workshop or carpentry experience, which makes a lot of sense because I was going to ask, like, when it comes to designing these puppets, it looks like so much engineering goes along behind it. Like, it's really great just getting to see like how much like effort is involved. Like, is that, if you could like take us through the process of like maybe when you guys from like paper to like actual puppet, that would be awesome.
Yeah. So we build a lot of the heads and things like the faces over a clay mold. Like we make an armature and then we put clay onto the armature, and then it gets covered with layers of paper mache by teams of people, community members, etc., that come in and do a lot of that. And then we pull them off of the mold and put them back together, and then start the painting process and costuming. So that's the mask sort of way that we do with both the head size masks, like these ones, like the owl here. This is just a smaller owl. But you know, inside you can actually see the paper, and the foam is there to sort of squeeze onto your head because it's like bigger than your head, so it would rattle around if it didn't have some foam. But you know, we also build a lot of things out of cardboard. So we just cut the cardboard, and then once you cut it, it can be folded and bent. And then we have these special staplers called staple pliers, and then you can make rounded shapes. And then what we do with that is ball newspaper, you know, crumpled newspaper, and tape it on to create the forms of around the eyes or whatever we want to sculpt. And then we paper mache that with, it takes less, you know, less layers of paper mache when the cardboard is on the inside still. And you know, but the armature one, you sort of remove it from the mold entirely. So that's how that works. But we also do, we also make shadow puppets out of cut black paper that we project using overhead projectors, and we crossfade between them with dimmers and things. We make luminary puppets that I think I sent an image into our as one of the images is a giant owl and fox puppet that are sort of lantern puppets. So we really sort of try a lot of different things. We do stilt walking, and we do rod puppets and hand puppets, and the only ones that we really don't do are marionettes, and it's just too hard. And you know, I figured if I was going to be a marionettist, I would want to just focus on that almost entirely. So I do this sort of more all of these other things, and keeps me busy.
Sure. Yes. Okay. I was just gonna give a quick ask if anyone else has any more questions. I have one more left, but it would be great if anyone else had some.
But it's all good. We're almost at the end anyway, and I'm gonna have to run to Duke.
Yes, yes, yeah. Please, like, if you are short on time, though, I do have one more question, maybe just to like include everything, if that's all right with you.
Go
Um,
ahead.
Thank you. So as summary of all the stuff you have discussed and like in line with our own environmental art gallery aspect, we were wondering if like you had anything just to like any like maybe not concerns, but like any overarching deep interests that ties like your work to the environment and as much as like if you could discuss a little bit of that and then we can end on that note as a summary.
I mean, can you just repeat the question? Like that didn't come across quite as a question.
Yes, my bad. So I was just wondering if you had a very an overarching environmental message just to give to the audience, and then maybe just as a conclusion statement for your pieces.
Well, I guess I would just, I've been reading a lot of different quotes from different artists, and one that a couple that stood out to me recently kind of helps me to sum up. And one of them is that by Theaster Gates, who is a Black man in the art world that has gotten a lot of renown for his communal art projects. And his is that beauty should be a basic service. And another one is by Matisse, which is creativity takes courage. And I'm not doing that, not saying that in order to like aggrandize my own courageousness, but I think that we all, my general thought is that we would all need to step into our courage a little bit as we face some of the things that we have to face. I mean, even just to face them, it takes a little bit of consciousness and a little bit of courageousness to engage with these things in a way that's not a bunch of negative or complaining or argumentativeness or yelling, but is just sort of like, we have got some problems and we need to face this. So like how can we do it creatively and in looking at the whole rather than just our own individual sort of lives. But our individual impacts and the small actions that we take are huge and need to not be undersold. And so my role as an artist again is to like raise my voice, because I'm sort of creating a way in for people to feel into these things and to start talking about these things. And so my role is to inspire also, and that's what I take very seriously, is to just like get people sparked, I guess. I like to be a spark and create like a little bit of movement around these things so that we're not in stagnation and we're not just ignoring it and being silent.
Thank you. That was a wonderful summary. Yeah, now I think Nicole will have the stage to finish up this meeting.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone. Thank you specifically, Donovan, for joining us today. That was a really wonderful presentation. I really think everyone enjoyed learning more about the work that you guys do. And I just want to thank everyone else for coming out today. There's going to be a few other speakers left this week, so I encourage everyone to go and check those out. But we really appreciate your attendance, and I hope that everyone has a great rest of the day.
Thanks so much, everybody. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for listening to my babblings.